The invitations arrived in pristine white envelopes, sealed with golden wax, each addressed in perfect calligraphy. Willow Creek High was buzzing with excitement as alumni began checking their mail. The elite of the class, the cheerleaders, the football stars, the debate champions, eagerly RSVP'd, yes, imagining the night as a perfect stroll down memory lane. Hidden in the midst of the familiar names, one envelope carried the name Emily Parker. Emily, the girl who had always walked a little slower in the hallways, whose books were her closest friends, whose attempts to fit in were met with cruel jokes. The label, class loser, had followed her like a shadow, whispered in locker-lined corridors and tattooed into memory by every sneer and snicker. And now, somehow, the reunion committee had dared to invite her. In their minds, it was a joke waiting to happen. She'll show up in something ridiculous. Like always, one alum snickered, swirling her glass of wine. We can't let her think she belongs here. Another nodded, a cruel smirk spreading across his face. Yeah, it'll be fun to see her squirm. Meanwhile, Emily, far away from their gossip and ridicule, opened her invitation with quiet curiosity. She studied the elegant card, feeling the weight of their expectation pressing down, but rather than fear, a strange calm washed over her. Memories of her high school years flickered, lockers slammed, whispered taunts, cafeteria laughter aimed at her. Yet, she also remembered the nights she had stayed up late, dreaming of a life beyond the narrow halls of Willow Creek High, imagining herself building something meaningful, something remarkable. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small. The invitation was no longer a threat or a humiliation, it was an opportunity. An opportunity to rewrite the story they had written about her, to arrive not as the shy, overlooked girl they remembered, but as someone entirely unexpected. And she smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, as the wheels in her mind began to turn. This would be a night they would never forget. The gymnasium buzzed with small talk and laughter, the clinking of glasses echoing off the walls decorated in silver and blue. The former popular kids, now middle-aged professionals with carefully curated confidence, mingled, exchanging polite compliments and sly comparisons of careers and families. Their eyes, however, kept darting toward the doors, waiting for the punchline. Emily Parker, the girl they once mocked, was late. Then, a distant but unmistakable sound cut through the chatter, a rhythmic, low-pitched thrum. Heads turned, eyebrows lifted. A few people laughed nervously, assuming it was a delivery truck, but the vibration in the ground quickly silenced the room. The sound grew louder, sharper, and unmistakably mechanical. Whispers began. Is that a helicopter? Outside, the sky above the football field was fading into a deep purple, the first stars flickering. A sleek black helicopter appeared on the horizon, its rotors slicing through the air with a commanding presence. The hum grew into a roar as it descended, gracefully hovering before touching down behind the gym. The landing stirred a gust of wind, flipping napkins and rustling dresses. Windows rattled, glasses wobbled on tables, and a collective gasp filled the gym. People pressed themselves against the walls, unsure whether to be terrified, impressed, or simply dumbfounded. The once cocky reunion goers stared through the windows, eyes wide as the helicopter door opened. A figure emerged, tall, poised, and impossibly composed. Sunglasses caught the fading sunlight, and her dress, sleek and flowing, hinted at confidence that radiated from every step she took. Emily Parker, the class loser, was no longer a timid memory of high school. She descended from the helicopter with deliberate grace, each footfall on the tarmac a statement of presence, of triumph. The rotor blades whirred down, but the air she carried seemed to silence every mocking thought, leaving only awe and a creeping sense of unease among the former bullies. Phones whipped out. Some tried to snap photos, some just stared, mouths agape. For the first time in their lives, they had no punchline, no joke, no way to diminish her. The girl they had once mocked had arrived on their stage, literally above them, and she was untouchable. The gym doors swung open, and Emily Parker stepped inside, her presence instantly shifting the atmosphere. The chatter faltered mid-sentence, glasses paused halfway to lips, and even the DJ's music seemed to soften in recognition of her arrival. She moved with a measured confidence, every step echoing lightly on the polished floor, her heels clicking like punctuation marks in a sentence she was writing about herself. Conversations died down as eyes followed her. The once popular crowd, cheerleaders, jocks, and debate champions, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had imagined this moment countless times, fantasizing about her being awkward, flustered, or visibly uncomfortable. Instead, they were confronted with a woman who radiated self-assurance and grace, a woman who clearly had no intention of seeking their approval. Emily smiled politely at acquaintances she remembered from high school, nodding with warmth that disarmed anyone expecting tension. "It's been a long time," she said, her voice calm, composed, and captivating. She didn't rush to explain herself or defend the years they had ignored her. She simply existed in the space, confident that her presence alone made her statement. As she moved further into the room, whispers began to ripple through the crowd. "Is that Emily Parker? She looks amazing. I can't believe it's really her." The irony was almost poetic. The girl they had once mocked now commanded the room effortlessly. Even the boldest former bullies avoided eye contact, caught somewhere between envy and shame. Emily engaged in conversation with elegance and wit, sharing anecdotes of her travels, her accomplishments, and her adventures with a charm that made her story impossible to ignore. She laughed softly at their polite jokes, offering genuine but controlled responses. Every word, every gesture, reinforced that she had rewritten the narrative. She was no longer the loser they remembered. She was a person who had lived her life on her own terms, and now she was letting them witness it. By the time she reached the center of the gym, the air had shifted completely. Admiration, awe, and a faint pang of regret rippled through the crowd. Emily Parker hadn't just arrived, she had arrived with purpose, grace, and power. And in that moment, the old hierarchy of high school seemed irrelevant, replaced by something far more enduring: respect earned and confidence claimed. The night wore on, but the energy in the gym had shifted completely. Where there had once been whispers of ridicule and anticipation of embarrassment, there was now awe and quiet admiration. Emily Parker moved through the room like a conductor guiding an orchestra, effortlessly drawing attention, commanding respect, and leaving subtle impressions with every interaction. She stopped to greet an old teacher who had once encouraged her love of literature. Their warm conversation drew curious glances from the crowd, who now saw her not as a class loser, but as someone who had cultivated intellect, ambition, and grace over the years. Emily laughed softly, shared stories of her travels, her entrepreneurial ventures, and the people she had helped along the way. Each anecdote was delivered with confidence, but never arrogance. Her success was evident, yet she carried it with humility, a contrast so stark that it only magnified the former bully's discomfort. In the corners of the room, former classmates whispered among themselves, their voices tinged with envy and regret. "I can't believe she did all that. We really underestimated her." Every smirk and sneer from high school had evaporated under the weight of her presence. Emily didn't need to gloat or seek revenge. The silent power of her achievements and composure spoke volumes. By the end of the evening, it was clear who had won the unspoken contest of high school identity. The loser label they had clung to for years had been utterly shattered. Emily had arrived literally above them in a helicopter, but more importantly, she had arrived emotionally and socially above the petty judgments and insecurities that had once defined her. As she prepared to leave, she glanced over her shoulder at the stunned crowd, offering a soft, knowing smile. It was the kind of smile that acknowledged the past without bitterness, a reminder that life rarely unfolds according to anyone else's expectations. With the same poise she had displayed since stepping onto the tarmac, Emily exited the gym, leaving behind an indelible lesson. Confidence, resilience, and success often arrive unannounced, and when they do, they are impossible to ignore. That night, the reunion would be remembered not for old rivalries or awkward jokes, but for the unforgettable moment when Emily Parker transformed from the class loser into the woman everyone wished they had underestimated more wisely.